One of the things all emerging countries need desperately is electricity. And one of the reasons for that is industrialization. Industry needs electricity. The big thing is things like renewables, which the government of South Africa touts consistently. We have so many solar farms and wind farms being planned and being built and all sorts. Renewables does not supply the base load, and that's what that refers to, the base load of electricity that is required to actually fuel industry. When you start to take a look at things like foundries, things like refineries, things like just normal factories, you realize that a lot of these foundries, a lot of these refineries will oftentimes use electricity that far exceeds even entire cities, right? And that's literally in a single day. They will need the electricity equivalent of like an entire city. One of the largest foundries in South Africa requires more electricity in a day than what the entirety of Johannesburg will use in a day. That's the reality. So renewables does not solve this problem. The other problem, of course, is that renewables are not cheaper. That's oftentimes the lie that is touted by politicians and green activists. The sun is free. Wind is free. Yes, but the things that actually capture the sun in order to generate the electricity, that's not free. That's called solar panels. They're very expensive. More importantly, solar panels are useless at night. So you need batteries to capture the electricity that is generated by the sun. And that is even more expensive than the solar panels. Wind farms, yeah, they're great. The wind is free. But the windmill, that's not free. The big problem, of course, with both solar and wind is that none of them are permanent. In fact, they are so short-lived that they barely make sense. Your average coal power plant can run with good maintenance anywhere from 40 to 80 to even 100 years before it needs to be decommissioned. There are ways to actually extend that even further with complete refurbishment and a complete revamp of the power station. But on average, between 80 and 100 years is good. The average solar farm will operate for between 20 and 25 years before everything must be removed, replaced, and reinstalled. Once it's been done, none of that can be recycled. We can't recycle batteries. We can't recycle solar panels. They go into the ground and they fill up landfills. Wind farms, they have a maximum lifespan of 7 years. Even with great maintenance, every 7 years, a windmill will have to be replaced. And that's just the insides, the gearbox of the windmill. Should that windmill be on the ocean, the blades as well as the gearbox will have to be replaced. And the blades tend to last between 3 and 4 years, and the gearbox between 6 and 7 years, even with great maintenance. The point is, renewables aren't cheaper. They're far, far, far more expensive because when you build a coal power plant, there's an initial cost that's very expensive, but as it operates, it gets cheaper and cheaper to operate. It's even more true for nuclear. That's right. Nuclear is the cheapest, most expensive to build, cheapest to run, because once you've built a nuclear power plant, that plant can effectively operate forever. And every year that it operates, it gets cheaper. In fact, it pays itself back within 10 to 15 years. And from there, everything you generate is profit. And it can be just made cheaper and cheaper. If South Africa started already in 1998, when we were first warned that we're going to run out of electricity to build nuclear power plants that takes between 7 and 10 years to build, we would have had a fleet of nuclear power plants that would have been able to supply South Africa with very cheap and very abundant electricity. Instead, we're in this position. Now, load shedding has been a thing of the past for a while. We have heard reports that the only reason we're not getting load shedding is because Eskom is burning diesel at an alarming rate. In fact, we're not even at the end of the year, and Eskom has already burnt through most of their diesel allowance, meaning they're just going to go into more debt in order to keep the lights on. And now we find out that Eskom, well, prices are increasing. You see, thanks to a dispute between Eskom and NERSA, the energy regulator of South Africa, NERSA found an error in their calculations, and as a result of this, electricity prices are increasing, and it's not beautiful. Now, most of this article is complete nonsense. It just goes into what the mistake was. NERSA didn't take everything into account, and there were some irregularities that they didn't look at. So they calculated the price increase over the next 3 years, wrongfully so. Now, what you need to remember is there will be no increase for this year. However, next year, there will be an additional increase of 3.4%. That takes the full increase to 8.76% on electricity. That is on top of the increase we already had this year. Then the year after that, there will be another 8.83% increase. That's on top of the increase. Guys, electricity is already at a point where most people cannot afford electricity. Most people cannot afford to keep the lights on. It is ridiculously expensive. I know for myself, just the other day, I loaded $500, I think, onto my meter, and it gave me like 150 units out of 500 rand. 150 units. 150 units keeps you going for like not even a week, right? And then you're done. I don't even have a lot of stuff. I'm a very minimalistic guy. Well, I'm a functionalist, not really a minimalist. I only buy stuff that has function. So I don't have TVs and all the rest of it. But even for me, $500 will maybe last something like a week. There's 4 weeks, so that's 2,000 rand for one person. I remember 10 years ago, I would load 1,000 rand onto the meter, and I would have electricity for about a month and a half. So that just shows you how incredibly bad our electricity prices have gotten. Chris Yealand learned about this, and he had the following to say. He said, a mere 54 billion error by NERSA to be reversed in Eskom's favor. It's absolutely astounding. Bearing in mind the massive undeclared, imprudently and inefficiently incurred costs that Eskom has passed through to its customers in the tariffs in the past 10 years. He's making a good point. We have been the ones that paid for the failures of Eskom over not just the last 10 years, I would say over the last 20 years. Well, 20, they say 12, 15 years. We have paid the price for Eskom's failures. Every single year that we had load shedding and Eskom had to do extra maintenance because they didn't do any maintenance before, we were the ones who paid for that because they were the ones who went to NERSA and said, we don't get enough money for all of this repairs and stuff that we have to do. Actually, NERSA should be clawing back these costs on behalf of electricity customers in the form of reduced electricity tariffs going forward. Yellen explained that the error would amount to a significant increase in consumers. Eskom's revenue in 2024-2025 financial year is expected to be about 300 billion. So the 54 billion rand error means Eskom is being allowed an extra approximately 18% price increase over and above the MyPad 6 price increase already granted. Now the MyPad is it's a deal that they have with NERSA every few years, multi-year plan. I believe it's called, multi-year plan, something. I can't remember exactly what the acronym stands for, but it's basically when they go to NERSA to negotiate how they're going to be screwing South African customers. Just to show you how bad things are getting in South Africa, and this isn't entirely just related to to Eskom, but Eskom definitely plays a huge part in this. Ford has announced that they're cutting jobs in South Africa by the tune of about 470 employees that they're just getting rid of. One of the reasons for this would be electricity prices that are just so expensive that they're finding it hard now with the tariffs that's also being levied against Ford to make sense of trying to operate at scale. You have another major South African mine that has posted massive losses. In fact, I'm going to have a video about this a bit later where we'll talk about how the meltdown is about to start. The point is, Eskom is destroying this country. Eskom has this country in a vice grip that we cannot escape from because the government will not release their monopoly on electricity generation. We need that now. Electricity needs to be privatized. Eskom needs to get out of the way. The government needs to do to Eskom what it did to Telkom and allow other players in the market to actually participate. Because if they don't, so there will be a riot. South Africans are already breaking under the immense pressure of electricity prices, and this is not going to help with that. Let me know in the comment section down below, guys. How do you feel about the electricity price? Are you coping? Are you still fine? Or is things starting to get tight? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comment section down below. Massive shout out and thank you to all of the patrons as well as the YouTube channel members for allowing me to do what I do, keeping me honest, and allowing me to make content that isn't necessarily clickbait. It's not necessarily the most flashy content, but it's stuff that matters. And oftentimes people don't care about stuff that matter, but your financial support allows me to bring that news to you guys. So thank you so much. If you like what I do, you like the channel, and you want to see more people reached, please consider hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, and just leaving a comment because it really does help. Then as always, be good to each other, be kind to each other, and I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.